Most people are in stasis. They do not have any velocity. They bounce from project to project and goal to goal without following through. They overthink, they procrastinate, they do little bits of work here and there, but they never make any big leaps. There's zero sense of urgency and there's zero pressure. It is the comfort zone, signified by a lack of movement, a lack of progress, and a lack of change. Stasis is not enjoyable to experience, but it is easy to remain in. And it comes as a result of three things: low velocity, low standards, and a lack of focus. To escape stasis, you must do the opposite of what leads you into it in the first place. That means you must act with high velocity, ramping up your energy and intensity to kick yourself out of the stasis loop. You must set high standards for yourself to get the results that you want, and you must cultivate laser-like focus on a single goal. High velocity, high standards, and narrow focus. These are the habits that make up what I'm calling the Triad of Hyperproductivity. So I'm going to break down exactly how you can adopt these habits and integrate this Triad of Hyperproductivity into your own life. So let's start with high velocity, which is the antidote to stasis. If stasis is defined by a lack of energy, a lack of action, and a lack of intensity, then high velocity can be defined as speed, energy, and intensity, all culminating in massive action. The same way a rocket needs to achieve escape velocity to exit out of Earth's gravitational pull, you must ramp up your own velocity to escape stasis. Slightly increasing your velocity is not enough. You might push the boundaries of it, but you will rebound inevitably and never escape. High velocity, not some velocity, is what you need. Speed, energy, intensity, action. So how do you reach this escape velocity? How do you force yourself out of stasis with speed, energy, and intensity? And most importantly, how do you ensure that you stay at high velocity once you've built it up, instead of falling back into stasis like so many of us tend to do? Let's begin to build this triad of hyperproductivity on its most important component, which is high velocity. And to do that, we're going to follow 5 steps. The first is to set a challenging, non-incremental goal that you are aligned with. Second is to commit fully to this goal. Third, you're going to build and maintain momentum through strong, consistent execution. Fourth, you want to obsessively chase the feeling of high energy and high velocity. And finally, you want to optimize your physiological energy. So let's dive into each of these steps in detail, starting with number 1, which is to set a challenging, non-incremental, ambitious goal. There is something deep in the human psyche that craves challenge. Think back to the last time you worked on something that you knew for certain you could achieve, something that wasn't that challenging or that interesting to you. You likely got bored, and you likely got bored quickly. You felt a lack of energy and velocity. Despite how easy it was, you found countless reasons to procrastinate on it, often by doing other work and other projects that were more challenging. See, it is hard to ramp up velocity when you have no need to, when there's no reason to do so. You can't just high velocity yourself into a vacuum. You need a reason to act with high velocity. If you don't have one, then it causes massive dissonance. Your entire lower self is asking, why are we pushing so hard? Why are we doing this? Just chill out. There's no reason to act this way. And this is exactly why, if you want to experience hyperproductivity, you must set a challenging goal for yourself. You need to have something that energizes you. And easy, non-demanding goals will not do this. Easy, non-demanding goals are like kryptonite for the ambitious individual. Note that I'm using the word goal here in its singular form, and I'm not saying you must set challenging goals. You should not set multiple goals if you want to achieve high velocity, if you want to experience and integrate the triad of hyperproductivity. Your chances of achieving this escape velocity are significantly reduced when you split your focus across multiple goals. I'll talk more about that later when we move on to the third habit of the triad, which is narrow focus. A good litmus test for whether your goal is ambitious enough is if it sounds a little bit stupid to other people. It should sound a bit stupid. You should feel a sense of imposter syndrome when you tell someone else about your goal. Like, there should be that insecure part of you that expects them to come back and say, That's not going to work, man. Like, that's so unlikely. I don't think you're going to achieve it. If you feel this way, then you're on the right path. You shouldn't be discouraged. I know this is a weird thing to say, but it's the truth. As an example, my stupidly challenging goal for the next 6 months is to grow my subscriber count on YouTube to 100,000. And if you're watching this today, you can see that I currently have around 9,000. And I'm growing at a rate of about 700 to 1,000 per month. So if you do the maths, it's not just going to happen by default. I'm not delusional. I know that there's a very low chance of this happening. I think the probability of achieving it is below 50%. It's unlikely, it's challenging, and when I tell people about it, including you watching this right now, I feel kind of dumb. Like, it sounds a bit stupid. But here's the thing. If my goal was simply to double my subscriber count in the next 6 months, take it from 9,000 to 18,000, I wouldn't feel energized. Like, it's not that demanding. It's not that challenging. I could probably achieve that goal if I just pushed a little bit harder, like slightly increase the velocity a bit. I don't need high velocity, I don't need high standards, and I don't need narrow focus to achieve that goal. But because my goal is challenging, it is demanding, there's simply no way I can even get close to achieving it without that triad of hyperproductivity, without the high velocity, without the high standards, without the singular narrow focus. This triad, it becomes necessary, not just nice to have. Remember, the goal here is to break out of stasis, and you are far more likely to break out of stasis when you are required to do so compared to when you just have a vague desire to do so. Another thing to note here is that challenging ambitious goals lead to non-linear strategies. So when you set a challenging non-incremental goal, and by that I mean something that requires a big leap, it forces you to think in a non-linear fashion. This is far more energizing than a goal that you know you can achieve for certain using a strategy that you've used in the past. Back to my YouTube growth goal. If I was to simply double my subscriber count from 9,000 to 18,000, then I could simply keep doing what I'm doing but push a little bit harder. Like I said, this is incremental and it's linear. It's not that interesting or exciting because I kind of know that I can achieve it. And as mentioned, it doesn't require the triad of high velocity, high standards, and narrow focus, so I'm unlikely to even develop those. But because I want to 10x my subscriber count, I need a different strategy. I need to set extremely high standards for myself and create really damn good content, and I still need to maintain or even increase the quantity and volume of what I put out because YouTube's kind of a black box and you never know what's going to hit. So setting a goal like this forces you to think differently about strategy. I like what Benjamin Hardy writes in his book 10x is easier than 2x. He says, seemingly impossible or massive goals are highly practical because they immediately separate what works from what won't, illuminating the few paths that have the greatest efficacy. He then adds, small goals are unable to clarify effective pathways because they are too marginal or linear from your current location. And with a 2x goal, there are too many potential pathways to reach the desired destination. This creates paralysis by analysis and makes it extremely difficult to know where to focus your best energy and effort. A few more things on the goal setting step. You must reframe failure, like that word. Say there's a 50-50 chance of achieving your goal, even if you act with high velocity, high standards, and laser-like focus. Well, there's a significant chance that you still fail to achieve it. Right? Like that's just the nature of it. But failure is not always binary. You will usually achieve far more than you would have if you set an incremental, less demanding goal. Back to the YouTube growth example, if I am to hit 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, there's a significant chance that I'll fail. Even if I go balls to the wall and attack the goal with full aggression, leaving nothing on the table. And so maybe I don't hit that 100K number. Maybe I hit 30K. Let's say. Is that a failure? Yeah, in some respects it is, like I didn't hit the number. But if I had set the incremental goal of simply doubling my subscriber count to 18K, would I have got to that number? Would I have got to 30K? Maybe, but it's far less likely, right? Because of the strategy and because of the aggression and intensity with which I'm attacking that goal. It's like the old cliche, shoot for the moon and you'll land among the stars. And so the reframe becomes this. If I set this challenging goal that has a lower chance of success, I will take a non-linear approach combined with the Triad of Hyperproductivity to achieve it. This combination will result in more success than I'd ever achieve with a linear, incremental approach. Goal achievement aside, the pure act of trying to achieve a demanding goal radically changes your productivity habits for the better. Even if you fail to achieve your goal, you will still come out on top in terms of your personal development and ability to focus and work. Finally, you do want to set a goal that you are aligned with. It's extremely difficult to build and maintain high velocity when you're working on something you dislike, you aren't interested in, or you can't see the benefit in doing. The way I came to alignment with my YouTube goal is by stacking up reasons and benefits for doing it. For example, even if I fail to achieve the goal, like miserably fail, like I don't even double my subscriber count, I still make like 20 plus videos in the process, which means I'm probably learning a ton of stuff. I'm improving my skills on camera, I'm improving my writing, and these things are transferable to future goals. So it's not like it's a complete loss. Secondly, I love creating content, so the work's actually enjoyable. And third, I'm pretty good at it. Like I can write fast, I can film fast, I can't edit fast yet, but I'm getting there. And so all these things contribute to alignment on that goal. So figure out how you can get that alignment, figure out how you can stack those reasons and benefits for pursuing that particular goal. Usually you encounter misalignment when you're only motivated by money or prestige or status. Those things usually don't carry you through and create enough high velocity to get you to where you want to be. The second step to developing this part of the triad, this high velocity, is to commit yourself fully to the goal. Nothing happens until you commit. The act of commitment is the prime mover, but you must fully commit, and most people don't. Most people do not fully commit. They keep one foot in stasis. They're sitting on the fence. They might be leaning over to one side, but they never get off it. They never jump into the next field and fully commit. And the reason this is because commitment is sacrifice. This is why commitment is hard, because it requires sacrifice, right? But sacrifice is unavoidable if you want to be extremely productive. There's just no two ways about it. You cannot have it all. You cannot commit to a challenging and demanding goal and not sacrifice something. And look, there might be things that shouldn't be sacrificed. You could probably set some goals that require too much sacrifice and just aren't worth it. For me personally, I would not sacrifice my relationship with my wife and my future family trying to build like a multi-billion-dollar business if that's what it took. But I'm not saying you should sacrifice everything. It doesn't need to be that extreme. It might simply be that you're sacrificing some leisure time or other projects that you want to work on, or your Saturday mornings. With my YouTube growth goal, I know that I need to sacrifice some things in order to improve my chances of achieving that goal, namely income. You know, there are projects that I could work on over the next 6 months that would produce income in the short term. But I'm foregoing that to build my channel, taking the bet that if I do so, I'll be able to maximize my income down the line. I have to sacrifice my social life a bit. I'm an extrovert. I like going out. I like meeting people, but I need to reel that in a bit because I need the time. It's not that I'm going to sacrifice my entire social life, but for the next 6 months, I need to work. And so I need to pull that back. The third thing is other projects. I have endless ideas of things that I want to work on. You know, products, projects, business ideas, they're all exciting to me, but they must be sacrificed because they diffuse focus. I can get to them later if I want, but the next 6 months, it's like laser-like focus. And finally, there's other non-work goals. I would love to run another mountain marathon, but the training load and the time required to get ready for that is a lot, and I just don't have that time. Like, I need to focus. So I'll be in fitness maintenance mode for the next 6 months. And that's a decision, that's a sacrifice that has to be made. Another reason commitment is so hard is because there's a fear in choosing the wrong commitment and choosing the wrong path or the wrong goal. This is extremely common. I deal with it all the time, not just to myself, but talking to other people. And it's also why I like to set shorter term goals when I lack directional certainty. So like, I'm just going to do this for 6 months or 3 months instead of a year. If you know for sure what you want to do with your life, with your work, then longer timeframes can be useful. Setting those 1 to 3 year goals can be incredibly powerful. But if the fear of following the wrong path holds you back from committing to any path, then I would suggest shortening that duration, compressing the timeline, setting a 3-month or 6-month goal instead of the 12-month goal. Also, don't fall into the fallacy of thinking that what you commit to today is what you're committing to for the rest of your life. You know, and I know that that's not the case, but it's easy to fall into that pattern of thinking subconsciously. And that's what really leads to paralysis by analysis. Just do something for 6 months, do it with high velocity, high standards, and narrow focus. And the worst case scenario is that you get to the end and you realize, that wasn't the most optimal goal. It wasn't the best thing I could have worked on. I should have been working on this. And so now you can go work on this. But you just had like one of the most productive 6 months of your life. And now you've got more data that can lead towards the right thing. And you've got these skills and these habits like high velocity and high standards and narrow focus. Another helpful approach here is to meditate on the fear of outcomes produced by stasis. So following a path, any path at all, will produce better outcomes than remaining in stasis. The latter, stasis, leads to stagnation. It leads to decay. It leads to dissatisfaction. And it often leads to poor material outcomes, poor health, bad financial position, and so forth. You should fear stasis more than you fear taking the uncertain path. Right, so step 3 for cultivating high velocity is to build and maintain momentum through powerful, consistent execution. When you set a challenging and inspiring goal for yourself, you often experience almost instantly this feeling of high energy and high velocity. You put your stake in the ground, you make that commitment, you say, this is what I'm doing no matter what. And there's an untamable energy that comes from making that strong commitment. But fail to maintain momentum, fail to apply discipline and consistency in execution towards your goal, and you'll quickly find that that high energy and high velocity starts to fade. It's for this reason that you must first act on your goal straight away after committing to it. Do not set a goal and then wait weeks before starting to work on it. You want to leverage that initial burst of energy that comes from committing to it. Idleness will lead you to procrastination, it will lead you to overthinking, and you will start to psych yourself out. You will set a smaller goal or a less challenging goal because you'll be thinking about it too much, analyzing all the reasons why it won't work. So you want to get started as soon as possible. Secondly, you want to maintain momentum through discipline. You will wake up one day and you won't feel energized. You will wake up, you will not feel like acting with high velocity. You will start to second guess yourself and the goal that you've set. You will come up with incredibly intelligent rationalizations as to why you should break your commitment and do something else. When this happens, you must ignore all of the above feelings and rationalizations and discipline yourself to do the work anyway. Failing to do this will slow momentum. Skipping one day might not be a problem. We all have off days, but it's when you start chaining those off days together through a lack of discipline and a lack of consistency that you get in trouble. Remember this, it is much easier to maintain existing high velocity than to build it back up from zero. Step 4 in building high velocity is to obsessively chase the feeling of it. Obsessively chase the feeling of high energy and high velocity. What do I mean by this? Well, you want to mentally and emotionally orient yourself towards that feeling. And you know what this feeling is like. You feel unstoppable. You feel like the architect of your own world. You feel in control, you're in flow, you're doing your best work. You've got massive momentum. But we quickly forget how potent this feeling is. We fall back into stasis because it's comfortable, at least we think it is. And we avoid doing our deep work because it's hard. At least we think it is. Except that's a lie, because you and I both know that living with high velocity is far more comfortable than living in stasis, at least in the long run. Consistent daily deep work, consistent intensity makes for a much easier life than stasis does, even if sometimes it's hard to sit down and do the work. So as weird as it sounds, and it's hard for me to articulate this, you want to obsess over this feeling of high velocity and high energy. You want to chase it. Crave it. Do everything you can every day to experience it. For this is where your best work will come from, and this is how you will achieve your challenging goal. And the 5th and final step for cultivating high velocity is to optimize your physiological energy. You cannot ignore your physical self. Acting with high velocity and high energy is extremely difficult if you lack physical energy. Riding the motivational wave can get you through a few nights of bad sleep, eating junk food, and not exercising. But eventually your body will catch up. You need to be healthy. I'm not saying that you need to throw the kitchen sink at this. You do not need to spend 20 hours a week optimizing your physiology. You do not need to become a Brian Johnson, but it does mean that you should prioritize things like sleep, nutrition, and exercise. Sleep is everything. You know what it's like to operate on a bad night's sleep. Once you have 3 or 4 of those chained together, it's like you're in zombie land. Now, it's easy for me to say this because I don't have kids yet. If you do, you have full permission to laugh at me when I eventually make a video on like why I'm so tired or something when I have my first. You want to prioritize nutrition. Avoid things like seed oils and overabundance of refined sugar, processed foods. Probably eat more protein. Most people don't have enough. I like to keep things simple. I track my macros every day, eat mostly the same foods. It's easy once you get rolling, but you do what you want. I'm not an expert. And then exercise. Both lifting weights and doing a lot of zone 2 cardio give me near endless amounts of energy. I strongly suggest you do something similar. But any exercise is better than none. So if it's playing sports or it's doing something you like, then just do it. Anyway, I could ramble on about this for hours, but I won't. You get the point. You cannot neglect your physiology and expect to maintain high velocity over the long term. Okay, so we have looked at the first part of the triad, high velocity. Now let's turn to high standards. Velocity without high standards will lead to poor quality work. So you need to have them in place. Again, your goal should be challenging enough that it requires both high velocity and high standards. But what does it even mean to have high standards? This is thrown around a lot, but let's actually define it. To me, high standards means going beyond good. Most people are satisfied with doing good work, whether it's publishing a newsletter or creating a YouTube video or building a business. They get to a point where it's good enough and then they move on. Now there's value to doing this. If you're a recovering perfectionist, then you need to train your finishing muscles or your shipping muscles to actually get work done, like to actually complete work and complete projects, regardless of how good it is. And there's a strong argument for focusing on quantity over quality when you start out in a certain field or endeavor or craft. Getting the reps in is more important than trying to make a masterpiece because that's how you rapidly develop skill. But at some point you've built these finishing muscles, these shipping muscles, you're consistent, and the bottleneck now becomes quality and excellence. And this is where the going gets tough because you're so used to finishing quickly and doing a quantity of work that it becomes relatively easy for you to create something good. You've done it plenty of times, but going from good to excellent is hard. Taking something from 90 to 99% is more difficult than taking it from 0 to 90%, right? So the last 9%, that often takes just as much time as the first 90%. And so we often tend to abandon the work or just call it done or say that it's good enough at that 90% mark. You might be thinking, well, Sam, why aren't you saying 100%? Like, why are you saying 99? Why not get it to 100%? There's no such thing as 100%. That's perfection. You can't achieve perfection. If you think you can, then you're a perfectionist and you're probably not finishing much at all. So having high standards is hard because it requires you to keep working past the point where you feel like you've done enough. Working on this video, which started out as an article, probably took about 20, 25 hours to like brainstorm, research, write it. And the last thing I wanted to do was edit it, like edit the article and edit the script. I was like, nah, this is good enough. I knew that I needed to. The temptation was to do a quick edit and just get it out. I was tired of working on it. I just wanted to get it off my plate. When you adopt high standards, you push through this. You push through the boredom and the discomfort. You get it to 99%. And the reason it's so important to maintain these high standards is that the return on investment is almost always worth it. Excellence in your work doesn't just get you slightly better results than good work. It doesn't get you 9% better results. It can get you exponentially better results. The reason why is that there is a ton of good work out there, but excellent work is not as common. But what if you're still in a phase where you know that you should be focusing on quantity, where you need to put the reps in to build your skill? Well, you can still apply high standards. You set a high standard for the quantity of output, not necessarily the quality. For example, let's say that you want to get better at writing with the long-term goal of growing a successful newsletter. You've never been great at writing, so you're in a phase where quantity matters much more than quality. Writing several articles over 2 weeks is a much better strategy than trying to write one really damn good article over 2 weeks. So you apply both high velocity and high standards to this goal of improving your writing through quantity. You think of the best, most optimal, highest standard way of doing this, and you decide that you'll write 1 article per day. So you obsessively focus over getting in those reps, regardless of how good you feel the content is. The high standard that you set for yourself is adhering to this plan of focusing on quantity. The person with low standards would not do this. They would do less quantity, or they'd mistakenly focus too much on quality because they have perfectionist tendencies. Speaking of perfectionist tendencies, before we move on to the third part of the triad, which is narrow focus, there is a difference between perfectionism and high standards. Perfectionism is a method of procrastination. The perfectionist keeps working on incremental improvements, trying to take something from 99 to 100%, like I mentioned before. This is impossible because there's an infinite chasm between work that's 99%, which should be the stopping point, and work that's 100%. 100% doesn't exist. So you can spend all the time in the world trying to get there without ever actually finishing. It's kind of devious like that. Having high standards, on the other hand, is just getting to that 99% point. Making excellent work, but not trying to get it to perfect, not trying to push it into that infinite chasm. One way to combat this perfectionism is by clearly defining the strategy to achieve your challenging goal. For example, with my YouTube growth goal to get to 100,000 subscribers, part of my strategy for that involves posting at least 1 video per week to take advantage of the luck surface area, like just putting out a quantity and volume of work, because you never know what's going to hit, right? And so with that strategy in mind, perfectionism is going to hold me back. I can't afford to spend an entire month on 1 video. I can't afford to try and make something 100% perfect. It does not help me get closer to my goal. Set high, not perfect standards for yourself. Do the work necessary to meet them, and you will win. All right, on to the third part of the triad, which is narrow focus. As Marcus Aurelius says, if you seek tranquility, do less. When you live with high velocity and high energy, it's tempting to think that you can take on more and more. You have this feeling of being unstoppable, of getting things done, and it's powerful, but it's also dangerous if you don't reel it in focus-wise. When you diffuse your focus, you have too many goals, either your standards drop or your velocity decreases. You cannot have it all. You can't act with high velocity, high standards, and do so in multiple different areas all at once, trying to achieve multiple challenging goals. You will not achieve true excellence and greatness this way. And you can see this when you look at people who are the best in their field. They have singular focus for long periods of time. They do less, but they do it better. But why is this focus? Why is narrowing your focus down so difficult? Well, it's because diffused focus is a hedge. It's often a result of limiting beliefs. You don't fully trust yourself to work on and achieve, or at least make massive progress on the challenging goal that you've set for yourself. And so you stack up some other projects and goals on the side just in case. This also gives you a convenient excuse if you fail to achieve your main challenging goal, because you can point to these other things and say, well, I had too much on my plate. But if you do this, you significantly reduce your chance of achieving your primary goal. It's a lose-lose situation. It never works. Another reason why singular narrow focus is so difficult is that it exposes your procrastination habits like little else does. When you have multiple projects on the go, many of them unimportant, you can procrastinate by doing work. It's not important work. You know it's not. It detracts from your main goal that you know should be your main goal, but it feels productive. When you narrow your focus towards that one challenging goal, you can't procrastinate with this type of work anymore, because the work you need to do is work that gets you closer to your goal. This is uncomfortable because you still have this habit of procrastination, right? But you can't just fall back on the busy work. You can't just fall back on the non-important work to still feel productive. You must meet face to face with your procrastination habit and deal with it head on. And so it becomes this very confronting binary thing. where it's like, do I work on my most challenging goal like I said I would, or do I do something else that reduces my chances of achieving it just so I can feel productive? And when all you want to do is anything but work, that is an uncomfortable question to answer. Remember, hedging does not lead to high velocity. It doesn't lead to high standards, and it certainly doesn't lead to the results that you want. The question you must ask yourself to narrow down your focus is, what are you not going to do? You have a limited amount of time and energy. You can choose to spread it across multiple projects and multiple goals, or you can choose to direct it with intensity and laser-like focus towards one objective. I love this quote from the author, Robert Greene. He says, "You gain more by finding a rich mine and mining it deeper than by flitting from one shallow mine to another. Intensity defeats extensity every time. As Schopenhauer wrote," I hope I pronounced that right, "intellect is a magnitude of intensity, not a magnitude of extensity." The only way you can achieve this level of focus is by asking yourself that tough question: what am I not going to do? Again, it comes back to sacrifice. Setting a singular challenging goal requires sacrifice of other options. And if you're an ambitious, creative thinker, you probably have ideas come to you all the time. When you narrow your focus towards that singular goal, those ideas will still come to you and they will sound amazing to you. You'll start rationalizing why you should work on them on the side and how you could do so. You'll tell yourself that you can do more than one thing and do it well. And slowly but surely, you will diffuse your focus across multiple projects. It's death by 1,000 cuts. Now, of course, I understand there's work that needs to be done regardless of your goal. If you're running a business, then there's work that needs to be done to keep the business running, like admin work, maintenance work. That's unavoidable. But you should avoid taking on new, exciting projects that don't align under your North Star challenging goal. And you often know what these are, right? As I was setting my YouTube growth goal, I told myself that by setting this goal, I'm deciding not to do things like grow my Instagram account, start a new business outside my personal brand, travel for weeks at a time or at all, launch the podcast I want to launch, start the new newsletter I want to start, write the book I want to write. Like, all these things are pushed to the side in pursuit of my main challenging goal. Don't get me wrong, like, these are all things I want to do. They're all things I could do, but they are all things that will diffuse my focus and reduce my chances of achieving that goal. To wrap up this video, I want to share 3 more things that will help you build this triad of hyperproductivity. These are principles or sort of mindset shifts that you should adopt. The first is that you should play to win. Don't play not to lose. To act with high velocity, high standards, and narrow focus, you want to orient yourself towards winning. Many of us play on defense, psychologically, that is. You tell yourself that you want to grow your business to 7 figures, but maybe subconsciously you set that goal out of fear. You fear that if you don't, then you will completely fail. You tell yourself that you want to get good at writing and grow a newsletter, but you subconsciously worry that if you don't do this, then you will fail to be able to quit your 9 to 5. You're playing not to lose. You're coming from a place of defense. There's nothing wrong with fear. It can be a great motivator, but playing to win is more potent. Not only is it more potent, it feels a hell of a lot better. So you try to grow your business to 7 figures because it's a damn awesome goal. You're already secure and you've already got a successful business. Now it's time to win, to ramp things up. Or you're trying to get good at writing and build that newsletter because you want to be the best writer that you know. You're playing to win. I want to grow my YouTube channel because I want to win. I want to publish the best content I possibly can. I want to show myself I can do it. I'm not coming from a place of fear or playing not to lose. I'm playing to win. You also want to drive yourself to the limits of your potential. And there's this quote from Abraham Maslow, which has always stuck with me, which is, if you deliberately plan to be less than you are capable of being, then I warn you that you will be unhappy for the rest of your life. Sounds cheesy, but it's true. If you are acting with high velocity, high standards, and narrow focus, then it is inevitable that you will drive yourself to the limits of your potential. Doing this is invigorating. It will energize you like few other things can. But be warned, it is not easy. Relentless pressure, speed, aggressive action towards your challenging goal. None of it is easy. Long hours, deep concentration, not easy. Yeah, it'll be nice to do something else. It'll be nice to play Zelda watch Netflix, or scroll the dopamine slot machine known as TikTok. But where has easy gotten you in the past? You don't want easy. You want the sense of satisfaction that comes from improvement, from pushing hard, from getting better, from doing that work and executing towards your challenging goal and driving yourself to the limits of your potential. Now, I can't make this video without also talking about how to avoid falling off. This isn't all sunshine and rainbows. There is a reason why the vast majority of people do not act with high velocity, high standards, or narrow focus. It is hard, and for that reason, you will have bad days. You can't expect to feel energized, have high velocity and high intensity every single day. Some days are going to be owls. And if you see them as tiny blips on the road to success, then you'll do just fine. You can acknowledge that you're having a bad day, do what you can, and then reset for the next day. But what you must avoid is chaining them together. 1 or 2 bad days, no big deal. But it's easy to let one bad day lead to another, and then another, and before you know it, you're in a weeks-long slump. You've lost momentum, and you feel like quitting. And this is where most people fall off the wagon completely, and they find themselves back in stasis. And there's 2 points I want to make here. The first is that bad days are not a signal that you are working on the wrong thing and that you should change it or quit. When people get in this kind of slump, they often think it's because they're working on the wrong thing. Sometimes this is the case, but it's not common. Usually it's a lie that you tell yourself. You fall into this fallacious trap of thinking that the reason you're in a slump or the reason you're having a bad day is because you're not aligned with your goal. But it's often for some other reason. Maybe it's physiological. Maybe you had a bad sleep or something else happened. It is unlikely that you need to change course. Don't psych yourself out. Like I said, just reset and then start strong the next day. The second point is to increase your time horizon and have patience. I'd say the most common reason why people abandon challenging goals is because they have a skewed sense of the time that it takes to achieve success or even see initial results. They get a couple of weeks in, maybe a month or two, and then they throw their hands up and think, well, it's not working. But success, especially with these challenging non-incremental goals, it's not linear. It's exponential as a result of compounding. So quite often you'll find that the majority of growth or achievement comes in that last 10 to 20% of the timeline. I fully expect with my YouTube growth goal to 100,000 subscribers that it's not going to be linear. The majority of subscribers will come in the last 2 months out of the 6 months. I could be wrong, but that's my assumption. So you need to increase your time horizon and you need to have patience to allow this compounding to happen. You must be aware that results may not come until the very end, and that can be discouraging. It can start to feel like you're on the wrong path. And look, I'm not going to lie to you, maybe you are. It's possible, nothing's guaranteed, but it pays to be honest with yourself and ask, am I simply wanting to quit because I'm feeling discouraged, or is this legitimately an unfruitful goal? Now, I want to leave you with one question. If you could commit to only one thing with high velocity, high standards, and extreme focus for the next 6 months, what would that be? What would it look like? What would you have to give up? How challenging would it need to be to demand that you act with high velocity, high standards, and narrow focus? Spend some time with that question, decide on a path, and then start attacking it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.